Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei got harem with Kuroka and Kunou? If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. As of the DxD timeline, most of the nine-tailed fox yokai are already dead. But long before that, when they were on the border of extinction, something unexpected happened. In an attempt to create a powerful child to take on her legacy, a very powerful nine-tailed fox decided to find a human to make a child with. However, in order to make sure that the child wasn't bound by human limitations, she decided that they would create a being of pure energy, not an actual child. This would also make sure nothing would happen to it instead of the 9 months of pregnancy. Unfortunately for her, during the ritual in which they produced him, yokai hunters tracked them down. She was weak from exerting the pure energy needed, she decided to simply pour as much of her power as possible and seal her child away. Time skip 15 years before DxD timeline. Isaka felt things were going pretty good. She met another kitsune 9 months ago, but the bastard abandoned her after getting her pregnant. However, he gave her Kunou, who was sleeping in her arms right now. She was also now the leader of the Kyoto Yokai faction, which was doing well. However, that was all ruined when someone came to her and told her they discovered a powerful ceiling in the ruins of an old temple. Apparently, there was an infant kitsune stuck inside it and had been in there before she was even alive. This ruined her mood to say the least. After much considerate, she decided she would act as a guardian for him, seeing as he was also a kitsune, and raise him. Something about him though is that he never cried and he seems to already release an aura. Just judging by their raw power, he was a lot more potential than Kunou. But the problem with that is that if the yokai in her faction found that there was another powerful kitsune, they would force her to 1. Kill him, or 2. Make him a living weapon, and she didn't want either of these to happen. So, she made sure to keep the knowledge of his existence on a need-to-know basis. But none of those was what she was really worried about. While those are concerning, something is troubling her far more. It's the fact that this child's chakra felt dark. He didn't have the natural warmth to him that most babies meant that he has a lot of darkness and rage inside of him, which made sense, seeing as he was put in stasis for a couple thousand years. If he ever succumbed to the darkness that is written into his DNA, then he might never be able to return to his normal self. Not to mention, he would be a fuck lot stronger if he did accept the darkness inside of him. He would be a monster. But even though Yusaka knew all of this and kept telling herself not to get attached, she could help but have a feeling of protectiveness over this child. He seemed so innocent. So she decided to give him a name. It couldn't sound like she had any connection with it, so she decided to randomly think of a human name, and she settled on Issei. Issei Haidu. 8 years later. Kunou was now 8 years old and was being taught magic alongside Issei. Make a sphere of your magic and then condense it in order to make it more powerful. While Kunou made a basketball-sized sphere, Issei made one the size of a beach ball. When they both condensed theirs, hers was a lot bigger than his. However, the instructor said, "Kunou, you're doing great. Issei, that's adequate." Kunou had to suppress the urge to stick up for her childhood friend, but then remember that Issei never even cared for any of the instructor's judgment of him. Kunou ignored the indignation feeling inside of her chest and simply kept training, as this was expected of the next princess of Kyoto. After the training, Issei simply turned around and walked back towards the Yusaka shrine, where he was supposed to meet Yusaka. Kunou, however, followed him. "Hello, Lady Kunou." Kunou had no idea why he suddenly started calling her Lady Kunou the last few months. It just felt like he was treating her like a superior rather than a friend. It made her feel cold and empty inside. Today she was going to find out why he was like this now. "Hello, Issei. Where are you going?" "To the Yusaka shrine." "But you go to mom's shrine every day, don't you have other things to do?" "No. Your family cared for me since I was young, but I am not a future leader like you. I must also play my role." Kunou felt like crying. It was like talking to a machine. His words, however, hurt her. What happened to the Issei who she played with, who had his trademarked grin and spoke with emotion? Issei, seeing Kunou's depressed and hurt face, actually felt a pang of sadness and anger, which made it over the wall he had built to keep his emotion in check and be the perfect guard for Kunou. Is that what those Kyoto elders taught him? See below. Issei simply walked past Kunou and into the Yusaka shrine. Yusaka brought him into the back dojo where he was trained by a far more strict and brutal instructor. Yusaka never wanted any of this to happen, but 3 months ago her advisor and council found out about Issei. They wanted to make him a bodyguard. Yusaka obviously refused, but they found a loophole. They directly asked Issei behind her back and said things like, "You will be playing your role and be repaying Yusaka," which convinced Issei to receive the training. As the training continued, Issei seemed to become more and more emotionless. Yusaka wanted to put an end to this, but the council and her advisors said it was almost ending and they just needed to complete the training for Issei. Another thing Yusaka has realized was that Kunou quite obviously had a crush on Issei. Kunou didn't seem to realize herself, and Issei didn't really understand emotions past their dictionary definition. Yusaka wouldn't mind them getting together, but she hoped they would do it when they were older, and Issei actually had emotions. Issei was learning Foxfire with his instructor, which was already something that most kitsune only learn once they were 12 or 13. The elders were making a perfect weapon. However, while Yusaka was getting a fake report on his strength in order to not show her how much Issei was improving. Hell, they put restriction seal on Issei in order for him to keep training and feel ashamed. Any other way and Issei would have been as strong as a low ultimate class devil by now, and both he and Yusaka wouldn't let him come. So they made him the strength of a mid-class devil and kept his morals low but ambition high. So Issei kept training. Issei, of course, was confused. He felt his skill was extremely high, he wasted almost none of his energy or chakra, and his amount of control was absurd. It felt like his control was enough for a lot more chakra than he currently had. However, it seemed whenever his chakra pool got larger, it would shrink. He spewed out a long line of blue flames, which were hot enough to melt steel, but his reserves only allowed him to do this for less than a minute. Issei. That's pathetic, you maggot. Yusaka can spew flames for an hour straight. Your training has amounted to nothing. In reality, the instructor saw that Issei was again getting stronger, and he slapped him. On his palm was yet another suppression seal. Quite soon, he was going to run out of space to put them on. His entire body was covered with seals. Even he didn't know Issei's true power anymore. But one thing he knew for sure. Issei was a hell lot stronger than him. You might think learning senjutsu would be cool, learning through cool montages, fighting monster, and doing cool stunts. But no, that is not what learning senjutsu looks like. Issei was currently sitting still, with Yusaka, the elders, and 2 yakai medics watching him closely. They were keeping a close eyes on his vitals and to make sure the hatred wouldn't take over him. Flashback no jutsu. Yusaka at first was skeptical of Issei learning senjutsu, both out of motherly concern and because Kitsune Yakeis never showed any potential in learning or wielding senjutsu. However, Issei insisted and claimed that it would provide a new arsenal for him. Yusaka eventually accepted after the advisors bugged her for over a week. She regretted it now. She regretted ever letting them train, near Issei. They told her it was almost over, but then later they kept asking for extensions, claiming they was on the verge of a breakthrough for his training. Well, she said no, eventually Issei went back to train with them anyways. So she had no choice but to watch over the training, hoping that the elders wouldn't do something drastic while she was there. As she continued observing Issei, she noticed something. Something she thought she wouldn't see ever again. Issei was smiling, sure it wasn't as bright or as happy as his old smiles, but it was there. Issei channeling senjutsu melted his stoic mask. However, his body began shaking and that smile quickly disappeared, turning into a scared look. Yusaka seeing this, instantly stood up and channeled a little bit of her chakra into her hands, then touched him, shocking him out of his stupor. When Issei opened his eyes, they seemed more emotional, more vulnerable. Issei realized this and panicked as he realized the wall he made to hold back his emotions weakened when he used senjutsu. While the wall blocked out the rage of senjutsu, the rage was breaking the wall apart. Yusaka also seemed to realize this though she kept silent. I have to go now. Issei got up and sprinted out of the room in a hurry, with a happy Yusaka and 2 very confused medics behind him. Later that night when Yusaka came home and found Kunou waiting at the dinner table, waiting for the chefs to finish making dinner. Kunou saw Yusaka and asked. What happened? Is Issei alright? Yes dear, he's perfectly fine. He simply needs a little time alone, that's all. What do you mean? Wait, you mean he feels sad? Kunou said in disbelief, not wanting her hopes crushed. Yes, through the use of senjutsu, his emotions are showing again. Yusaka couldn't contain her happiness, telling the good news to Kunou. Even though Kunou tried to hide it, Yusaka could see the hopeful expression on her face. Yusaka knew that this would happen, even she was happy. Maybe once Issei came to his senses, she would have her son back, not this emotionless shell of the formerly happy boy. Meanwhile, Issei was in his room, burying his face into his pillow. What happened to me? Why do I feel like this? Despite the mental wall he built, 2 years of frustration began to show as Issei began crying. Crying into his pillow, he started yelling into it, no longer caring if people saw him. You're the perfect weapon, stop crying, stop crying. Why can't I stop crying? Emotions are for the weak, so why do I keep showing them? Why? I don't want to be weak. I don't want to be weak. Despite telling himself this, the tears didn't stop flowing. Luckily for him, something distracted him from his problems for now. his phone lit up with a text that said, "Come to the Kiyomizu-dera shrine, now." It was from one of the highest-ranking elders, which was strange. Normally, the council would summon him as a group, but Issei didn't question it, his emotional state making him less logical, and simply decided to go to the shrine. After all, anything was better than this. However, when he arrived there was only the elder who summoned him. This was new for Issei, he was always summoned to at least 2 members of the council. Issei of course asked him about it, but he would only respond with, "Leave Kyoto and explore the world for the next 6 years. It will finish your training." Issei wouldn't do it, seeing as he had a family here and wanted to remain here and one day repay Yusaka for her kindness. When he declined, however, the elder struck him and amplified the resistance seal's effect on Issei. Issei fell to the ground unconscious as the seal sapped away most of his strength. This caused the seals to disappear as they all burned out. The elder grabbed Issei's unconscious body and locked him into a warehouse with the dead body of the city's advisor, who he has killed just minutes before Issei got here. Time skipped 6 years later. Issei was getting ready for his first day in Kuo Academy, a prestigious high school which was controlled by devils. In case you're wondering why he was intruding on devil territory, well, after being kicked out of Kyoto due to being accused of murder. Ironic, right? The weapon of Kyoto, son of Yusaka, banished from Kyoto for murder. He wanted to build friendly relations with devils since he had to join someone's side. He was mostly hoping to meet Kunou though. He now stood at a decent height of 5'8", with long brown hair and emerald green eyes, wearing the customary Kuo Academy male uniform. Flashback 6 years old. It wasn't me. It was that bastard over there. Despite usually suppressing his emotions, Issei was feeling a torrent of emotions, mainly anger and sadness. Angry at the elder who framed him and the others not listening to his words. But sadness that he was being framed, not able to defend himself, sad that Yusaka was disappointed in him. He had just learned that the council had put restriction seals on him without his knowledge, lied to him about him not being strong enough unless he trained himself to death, but now one of the council's members was framing him for the murder of Yusaka's advisor. You were the only other person in the warehouse, also we felt a massive release of your energy, and there were traces of your chakra on the advisor's corpse. This all points to you being the murderer, being the only suspect. You are sentenced to death for treason, for murdering a yakai under Kyoto's rule. Yusaka hearing this stood up. The previously disappointed look on her face turned into one of anger. No. There is no concrete proof that Issei was the murderer, he is innocent until proven guilty. He should get a lighter punishment that should allow him to prove himself innocent. Yusaka didn't mention how Kunou had been crying ever since she found out, or that neither Kunou or she believed that Issei was the murderer. She knew that one of the elders was responsible, but there was no proof that he lured Issei near the warehouse. The elder erased the message. Lady Yusaka, Issei is the only possible suspect, and Issei's psychology is messed up, I mean, he doesn't even show emotions. If we don't kill him, the best we can do is exile him. There is no other option without causing a public uproar. Pardoning him would be an unfair use of your power and will no doubt cause friction within the faction. After the trial, Issei walked up to her and said, "Thank you, Yusaka, for taking care of me for so long and raising me. I hope that I can return one day and repay you for your kindness. Thank you." Despite Issei putting up a brave front, Yusaka could tell that despite being extremely mature, Issei was still a 9-year-old child at heart. But know this, if my name isn't cleared in the next 6 years, I would be forced to join another faction. Ironic isn't it, the secret weapon of Kyoto, forced to join another faction. Also, one last thing, tell Kunou I'm sorry. Yusaka was devastated to hear this. She quickly thought up a plan. Wait. Issei, Kunou will be going to Kuo Academy. I'll go there. Flashback end. Now, the 6 years were over, he was going to be registering at Kuo Academy. He really missed Yusaka and Kunou, and after 6 years abroad, his emotions were back. As he was walking to school, he noticed how much attention he was getting, after all, it would be hard not to. All the girls would point at him and whisper about him, while all the guys would curse him for being a pretty boy, wishing and already planning for his death. While the fangirls around him were going. Is he going to go to school with us? The girls around her all squeal, hoping that he would be part of their next high school fantasies. I think I just creamed myself. Girls around her were all agreeing. I'm shipping him with Kiba in my new fanfic. Murmurs of I'll read that were heard. All the boys around him were saying. God damn it, why is bastard senpai, Yudo Kiba, not enough? I don't want to die a virgin. Why is there another pretty boy? This school is a magnet for those unholy demons. With all these pretty boys, I'll never get a girlfriend. Issei resisted the urge to facepalm. Nothing made him question the human race more than teenagers with hormone problems. As he walked into his classroom, something similar happened, except now, most of his attention was on 2 girls. One was Kunou, who had several girls fawning over her, and another girl who was a petite girl with snow-white hair and hazel eyes. Her overall cuteness and the innocent look was ruined by the stoic look on her face. Kunou, however, was staring straight at Issei with disbelief written all over her face, not believing that Issei was really here. Issei introduced himself and was bombarded with questions, all of which were interesting, to say the least. Are you single? What kind of girl do you prefer? Do you lock your room, when do you go to sleep, and are you a deep sleeper? And some from the guys in the class as well. Does holy water kill your kind? Will you be like that pretty boy bastard, steal the affection of all the girls, and make every hot-blooded male in the school to hate you? Do you prefer death by drowning, choking, burning, or brutal bludgeoning by virgin teenagers with insecurity and hormone problems? Normally, the teacher would interfere with the borderline stalker-like behavior and blatant threats, but he didn't really like Issei to begin with. Issei sweat dropped at that last one and decided not to answer any of them, hoping that none of them were actually serious, hopefully. He sat down next to the only available seat, conveniently between Kunou and Kaneko. Kaneko deadpanned at the blatant attempt at plot progression between her and Issei, the author that used. Kunou looked conflicted on whether to approach him, but she kept quiet for now, no need to make a scene during class after all. Kaneko didn't seem to care about him at all, favoring the various snacks she kept somewhere. While Issei wasn't really paying attention in class, Kunou was listening closely. Kaneko was simply eating Pocky sticks and not even pretending she was listening to what the teacher was teaching. The teacher was a little miffed, however, couldn't bring himself to scold Kaneko, so instead, he vented on Issei. Seeing as you are paying so much attention in class, Mr. Haidu, would you like to inform us of what happened during the Battle of Stalingrad? Germany fought the Soviet Union for the city of Stalingrad, which was located in southern Russia. The Soviet Union won, but it was one of the bloodiest wars in World War II, with over 2 million killed. Issei didn't mention how he found this out by going to the museum in Stalingrad, or that he knew that since he was 9 though. Oh, very good, Haidu. The teacher was surprised at his detailed answer and decided not to say anything else and went on with the lesson as if nothing happened. Issei eventually tuned him out and decided that he would wait for lunch. At lunch, Issei sat down underneath a tree by himself and took out his bento box. However, before he could open it, Kunou sat down next to him. Issei, what happened? Issei decided to start talking. Look, Kunou, I didn't mean to leave you. The elders framed me for the murder. Issei said bitterly. I know that, Issei. We could never clear your name though because the elder was murdered after the trial. Without his confession, we can't do anything. Kunou replied sadly. Issei was confused. Then why are you talking to me? Aren't some people in the faction concerned about you being near me? Because mom agreed to let me stay with you here in secret. So as far as anyone else knows, I'm just here to build relations with the devils. Issei was left speechless. He never expected Kunou, who had always wanted to be a good leader in the future for her faction, would ever take this kind of risk, and she was doing it for him. It was a gesture that he really appreciated, since the last time they saw each other, it was before the trial. Thank you, Kunou, for coming here. I never expected for you to choose me over your faction's trust. Kunou blushed and shyly replied. We're friends, right? I'll always be there for my friends. After the school ended for the day, Issei was walking home, thinking about the events that occurred today. Kunou actually remembered me after all this time. Yusaka even let Kunou even went behind their faction's back to come here. Wait, does this mean Kunou has? But then a voice behind him snapped him out of his thoughts. Hello. Are you Issei Haidu? Issei turned around and saw a girl with silky black hair and large violet eyes looking at him. She looked nervous, but since Issei could use Senjutsu, he could tell it was all an act and that she has malevolent intentions. Issei decided to play along, seeing as he wanted to know what she wanted to do with him. Yes. Please go on a date with me. Sorry, I'll have to pass. I don't go on dates with people who I don't know, sorry, but I'll have to decline your invitation. The girl seemed to be on the verge of tears, Issei was dying on the inside, it was hilarious how she was so good at acting, faking that he cared. He hastily replied. Then how about we just hang out on Sunday? The girl stopped sniffling and replied. Sure, thank you so much. Issei looked a little confused, but that was because he was trying so hard not to laugh. Oh my god. Did she really think that someone would actually fall for that? Oh my god. He thought. Issei asked fallen angel girl. What's your name though? Yuma Mano. At his house, Issei was watching an anime, specifically No Game No Life, which was one of his favorites, except for the fact that they discontinued it. Just because it was tracing poses. The poses were so generic too. The author would like to point out he is still a little salty about that. Suddenly, a Grimoire magic circle appeared and out came a note. Oh wee, I wonder who that would be. Issei said out loud, sarcasm dripping from each word. Issei Haidu, please meet me and my peerage in the Orc tonight at 5 p.m. We have some questions to ask you. Ria's Gremory. Issei thought it was kind of funny how the Gremory heiress tries to take control of the situation. It seems like that she thought that just because she owned the territory, everyone would automatically listen to her, despite how pathetically weak she was compared to most supernatural beings. But since he was trying to become allies with the devils, he had to act like that he actually cared about what she thought and look up to her. This was the part that he was miffed about since it reminded him of his worst times in Kyoto. Ever since then, he hated people who thought they were better just because they were in a position of relative power. If they were his direct superior, sure, but not when they don't even affect him. Nonetheless, at 5 p.m., he showed up at the Orc to be interrogated, no questioned. I mean honestly, at least try to be subtle, he thought. He was tempted to show up late on purpose. As soon as he walked in, he heard a shower running. So naturally, Issei decided to look around and saw a literal shower in the middle of the room. He honestly didn't know how they managed to get approval for that. However, Issei was still a teenage boy, and seeing a teenage girl, however, even if there is a curtain between them, is incredibly arousing. Issei tried to ignore that though when he saw Kunou sitting on one of the couches. He had a feeling this was going to be one awkward conversation. He knew that something bad was going to happen when Kunou coldly said to him. What is this I hear about you accepting an invitation to hang out with a fallen angel on Sunday? Issei had a feeling that if he answered this question wrong, he would regret it a lot, and he doubts that they would stay, let alone be anything more than friends. I swear Kunou, I can explain all of this. Well then Issei, start explaining. Kunou said in a cold tone. Issei flinched, he didn't know that Kunou was this mad, it hurt him knowing that she was mad at him. Issei then proceeded to explain everything, how he wasn't interested in Yuma and he was only going to hang out with Yuma because he wanted to find out why she was trying to lure him into a trap. Though while he was explaining, Akeno made a whipping gesture at Issei, then pointed to Kunou. She then proceeded to whisper into Kiba's ear and sent Kiba into a laughing fit. This made him a little irritated. Why are they even here, oh yeah, to ask me some questions? He then proceeded to apologize. Kunou, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were going to be so worried about me. Kunou blushed, she was embarrassed to act so harshly when she didn't know the entire situation. It's fine, she replied. After the conversation, she felt like that she should leave. I say, see you tomorrow. She happily responded and left the Orc clubroom. She sure seems a second, does Kunou really do have feelings for me? Issei thought in shock. Somehow, at the exact moment she finished, Rias came out of the shower. Issei had a feeling that she was waiting for them to finish their conversation, not wanting to intrude on their personal business. She then proceeded to walk up to him and introduced herself. Hello Issei, my name is Rias Gremory, heiress to the House of Gremory and the current ruler of the Kuo town territory. Issei quickly snapped out of his thoughts and quickly responded to Rias. Hello Rias, my name is Issei Haidu, a former kitsune of the Kyoto Yakai faction. Now I'm just a high schooler of Kuo. Rias may have been a Gremory, one of the kindest devil families, but they weren't so strong by not taking advantages when they presented themselves. Her mind was reeling at the possibilities of a powerful kitsune yakai on her peerage. Male yakai were extremely hard to come by, and having a kitsune yakai was even more rare, since kitsunes had some of the lowest birth rates, even by supernatural standards. May I ask what happened? Issei tried to sound nonchalant, but it still came out bitter. Just a misunderstanding that caused my exile. Despite how much he wanted to vent, he still wasn't sure if the information was classified and didn't want to make any more trouble for Yusaka to fix. It must be quite a misunderstanding for you to get exiled, isn't it? Well, anyways, I just wanted to ask what you are doing in my territory, since it is my responsibility to make that nothing bad happens here, Rias said, trying to intimidate him. Don't worry, I'm not here to cause trouble for you, in fact, I'm here to befriend the devils around here. Though I do have to admit that there are some things I dislike about the devils. The fallen angels are more interested in research than anything else, and more sinful. The angels' population are declining, so the devils seem to be the most promising of the three biblical factions. This surprised Rias. She didn't think that he was here to make friends, considering how immensely powerful he is. If you were to sense his aura, he would at the upper high-class devil tier, which is already concerning, considering the fact that she was only mid-high-class devil in terms of power, but the most concerning thing is. Kaneko has reported that Issei was covered in layers of high-class seals. She didn't believe this at first, but Kunou later confirmed that when Issei was younger, he was already mid-ultimate devil class. Which is frightening. Well, if you're here to establish friendly connections, would you like to join my peerage? Issei looked amused, he knew that she would try something like this. Devils were greedy in nature, in fact it would be more concerning if she didn't ask him. Sorry, I'm afraid that it wouldn't be possible. Not to sound beepy or toot my own horn, but unless you got 8 mutation pawns, I don't think you'd be able to reincarnate me into a devil. He explained. Riaz looked crestfallen, but she was expecting something like this. She needed more members on her peerage to make sure she wouldn't have to marry that man. Just the thought of it made her shiver in disgust. She quickly cleared her head and responded to Issei. Well, to be honest, I was sort of expecting that, but since you can't join my peerage, would you be interested in joining the orc? She was genuinely curious on whether he would join or not. Sure, I'll think about it. But are there any benefits? Issei was nonchalant about this, she seemed to be nice enough, but he was also trying to get some benefits. You get to skip classes. Does that count? Riaz and the other responsible students thought this didn't mean much, but Issei instantly looked much more interested in conversation and asked. Where to sign up? Yes. Riaz wasn't sure how to respond to his sudden enthusiasm. As Issei ran out of the room, Kaneko commented. He seems enthusiastic for all the wrong reasons. Everyone else in the room could only sweat drop at how true Kaneko's words were. The next day, Issei had gym class first, the only class he couldn't skip as it was a requirement. Issei wasn't annoyed though, as at least they got to play sports right. 15 minutes later though, Issei was ready to kill his gym teacher. They spent 10 minutes explaining how to play basketball. Who in this day and age didn't know how to play basketball? But then, they still had to practice basic skills. Issei was forced to pass a ball for 5 minutes and had to act like he was interested, which he wasn't. It got so boring, he excused him to go to the bathroom and just in there playing on his phone until class was almost over. But hey, he got a high score in Candy Crush and that was all that matters. Unfortunately, when he came out, the gym teacher wasn't too happy waiting for him. Hi dude, you seem to be fine. I thought with the amount of time you spent in there you would have some serious stomach problems. It was obvious that the gym teacher was at least miffed, his voice was dripping with so much sarcasm, it could put out a wildfire. Issei wasn't too concerned, since it's not like the teacher had any proof or could do any real harm to him. If he gave him detention, he would just wipe his memory and run away. Yeah, but I feel so much better now. Thanks for the concern though. The gym teacher nearly palmed a basketball and then had a great idea, he said. Alright, seeing as you are in perfect health, why don't you demonstrate what to do when in a 1v3 situation in basketball? Sure, why not? Issei grabbed a ball and waited for the other 3 volunteers to come. The teacher however, picked students that were a full head taller than Issei and looked like that they should be playing for a professional basketball league. After basketball scene. Christ, that guy's a monster. How can he jump that high? I swore that I saw him jump 10 feet into the air. Issei was dying on the inside, supernatural beings were just so much physically superior to humans. If he wanted, he could have jumped to the ceiling and not break a sweat, so him showing off his epic 10-foot jump was nothing more than a slight hop. The teacher was in awe at what just happened. From what he had seen, Issei just ran up and jumped and he just dropped it into the hoop. He dropped the ball into the hoop. Just then, the bell rang and Issei left to go to his next class. The gym teacher still didn't seem to able to pick his jaw from the ground. His expression was hilarious, it seemed like he was going to have an aneurysm, his brain didn't seem like it could handle the quote Issei sheer awesomeness that was Issei Haidu. But was all a relatively normal day for Issei Haidu. It was now Sunday and Issei was walking to the mall to hang out with the fallen angel. He decided to arrive late on purpose just to annoy her and say it was just hanging out and it wasn't like it was a date or anything. He decided he wanted to try to annoy her to try and make her run her mouth. Of course, it was mostly for comedic relief. Hey Issei. It was said in such a sickeningly sugar-sweet voice that it would have been hard for someone to not realize that she was forcing herself to be here, only an idiot would fall for that. Get it, fall for it, fallen angel. Idiot would fall for that, Canon Issei fell for it. Get it? No, alright, I'll go back to my corner, but Issei couldn't tell, actually, maybe it was just his senjutsu. Yuma came dressed in a fancy white dress, which was obviously too fancy for just hanging out. In fact, she even tried to tighten her top to make her breasts look bigger and firmer than they were. Issei tried to look happy and interested in her, but he was dying of laughter on the inside, she was going full try-hard mode. Honestly, who wouldn't question this? A new or unpopular student asked out by a hot girl because she liked him and said hot girl was now trying so hard to look cute that it was getting kinda sad. Which idiot would actually fall for that? What did she think was going to happen? Did she think that he was going to stare at her chest the entire time and just ignore everything else? People these days. Hey Yuma. Where are we going today? Issei said this in a strained tone. He was running low on fumes, shopping with women truly drains a man's soul and energy. And the worst part is, the person who he was shopping with was a fallen angel who was trying to seduce him every chance she got. bending over because she dropped something, or pushing her breasts into his back, or shoving her butt onto his crotch and grinding. Honestly, it seemed like that she was getting more and more desperate. These weren't seduction, but more like she was a hooker trying to sell her product. He was getting bored of going shop to shop with Yuma while she tried on various lingeries and outfits that exposed more skins than most bikinis. This would have been fun if instead of Yuma, it was Kun. Turning his head around, he said. Hey, stop shoving words into my mouth, trying to make us closer. We're just childhood friends, you sick bastard, leave us alone. That actually hurt me, Issei, why would you be so mean? Jerk. Issei soon turned his head back and acted as if nothing happened. While she was trying to flaunt her body, he started reading her aura and started to learn about her. From what he could tell about her aura, she was probably sent on recon to scout him out. Also, this was obvious since she was horrible at seduction and her energy level was way too low for her to be an assassin. So, with all that, he came to the conclusion that she was sent on recon only to go rogue. With that in mind, he went on with the date. Though, through all of this thinking, Yuma didn't even realize that he was just standing there thinking about who she really was. She was thinking. I'm sure that he's thinking about me. I'm actually surprised that this date lasted as long as it did. It almost seemed as if someone is forked out anyways. Back to the story. Issei was only getting more and more tired. The more he read her aura, the more pathetic she got. You see, Yuma was barely even mid-class, which is pathetic and sad on its own, but if that wasn't enough, she was waltzing on devil territory, trying to pull off whatever the hell this was supposed to be. Finally, the date was over, thank God. And Yuma brought him to a park. As they walked closer to the fountain in the middle of the park, she said. Would you do something to celebrate our first date? Depends, I guess. Is it expensive? Issei said, not even looking her in the eye. Hey, don't judge him, he had to make sure his fingernails were clean. It's important, okay? Yuma's eyebrow twitched. Why was this guy being so difficult? Will you die for me? As she said this, she flew up and turned into an older and more mature-looking version of herself, though the main difference was that she was sporting a pair of jet black pair of feathery wings. No, ask for something easier and cheaper too. My soul is pretty expensive, you know. Yuma decided to ignore that and just said. Well, would you reconsider? She materialized a light spear in her left hand and was prepared to throw it when. Hell no, bitch. Rainer's left eye twitched, she didn't like being called a bitch and threw the light spear at Issei. Issei was prepared for this and spewed out the minuscule amount of chakra he gathered and spewed a torrent of foxfire at the fallen angel. Rainer saw this and panicked. She quickly took out the only thing that might stop the flames and let her escape this encounter alive. It was a small metal half-disc with a button which Kakabiel gave to her before she left, claiming that a benefactor got it just for her mission. She was desperate, she didn't want to be incinerated and unfolded the disc and dropped it, which left a 10-layered magic circle behind, promptly stopping the wave of foxfire. Issei blinked, he was confused, not knowing what was going on. His attention was drawn away from the speck that now was Rainer in the distance, focusing more on the device left on the ground. It was a little disc which held enough magic to create a temporary containment barrier. Which was weird, trinkets like these are expensive. Meaning that it must have been supplied to her by someone else. Whatever it was, it only made the situation more complicated and delicate. Issei sighed and pocketed the strange trinket. Why do things always get so complex when I'm involved? I'm only here to talk to Kunou. Walking home, he reminded himself that he had to ask Riaz about this tomorrow, seeing that he had the perfect time to ask her at the next orc meeting. The next day, Issei woke up with a very naked Riaz using him as a body pillow. While he knew devils used skinship with servants, he never thought that she would do it with him. However, what was by far more surprising to him was that Kunou was also in bed with him. She wasn't naked, thankfully, though Issei did feel a bit disappointed. She was dressed in a nightgown that was way too big for her though. Issei instantly sat up, which woke both of them. Riaz acted calm and just said. Morning, Ice, despite being completely naked in his bed. As he looked down though, he realized he was only wearing boxers. He was actually more relieved that he wasn't naked than he was embarrassed. Kunou, on the other hand. Her face grew fire red as she leapt out of bed and ran to the door. Unfortunately for her, the large nightgown slipped and she had to hold it up, flashing Issei. Issei eventually simply gave up and passed out. After Issei woke up and they all got dressed, they all went down for breakfast. While Riaz cooked, Issei and Kunou were stuck sitting together in extremely awkward silence until Issei decided to try and apologize. I'm sorry, Kunou. Please forgive me. It was an accident, I swear. Kunou's blush got even darker as she mumbled. It's alright, I don't mind. It was my fault anyways. While this made things less tense, it wasn't any less awkward. After what felt like hours to Issei. Here you go, full English breakfast. Riaz put it down and then just ran out of the house randomly. As this happened, Kunou thought of what happened. She was pretty sure she and Riaz were watching an anime together yesterday night. She definitely wasn't in Issei's bed. Then she remembered. Riaz had asked her why she didn't get together with Issei. She had said she was afraid. At that moment, Kunou thought of it. Riaz had tried to get Issei and her together. No wonder she was so fast to run away. Issei was eating pancakes when he saw Kunou's face. Ever since they were kids, Kunou always had that look on her face when she realized she had been tricked. With this information and the fact that Riaz bolted out of his house, he was reasonably sure he knew what had happened. Hey Kunou. Wanna prank Riaz? Let's give her hell. Riaz was already halfway to school when she felt like someone dipped her into a bucket of ice water. She shivered, not aware of the apocalypse that awaits her in the future. What she did was okay, something between friends, right? They were decent people, as long as she stayed careful, she should be relatively fine, right? If only she knew, if only she knew. They would make her regret ever being that optimistic. Unknown to Riaz, Issei and Kunou were both directly behind her. You might wonder, how does Riaz not see them? Lazy writing, lazy author. But no, this was not the case. They were hiding behind a convenient wall of plot holes. When she arrived at school, Riaz slowly and carefully opened her locker, expecting for it to be booby-trapped. But when it was completely opened, nothing happened. Riaz took this at face value and was just about to put her backpack into her locker when a literal gallon of super glue, the magical kind, fell on her. To add insult to injury, they added a layer of glitter, making her look like some sort of reject arts and craft monster. Everyone in the hallway around her stopped talking, sensing something was off. They all comically turned their heads slowly toward Riaz's locker. They all cracked up at the sight of the glitter person, but then they realized, beneath the mountain of glitter and super glue, was Riaz. The laughter slowly stopped and everyone ran away, not wanting to be caught laughing at the school idol. Despite being one of the most prestigious schools in the nation of the rising sun, Kuo was still full of teenagers, which means gossip would follow the school idols. What I wouldn't give to do that to her, but not with glue, if you get what I mean, one supercharged pervert said. Dude. This is our chance to seize the day. I'm certain that she'll remember us if we help her catch the culprit. She might even reward us if you're picking up what I'm throwing down, Motohama said to Mitsuda. Who did that? Find out, now. Both the Kendo Club and the Student Council commanded. However, despite what both the Kendo Club and the Student Council said, some people were still laughing and making fun of her. Her more insane, devoted followers, started to attack anyone who dared laugh at their Ria-senpai. By attack, I meant biting and clawing. Eventually, it got so out of hand, an all-out brawl started. The entire situation got so out of hand that even the teachers couldn't stop them. One football player tried tackling someone but ended up tackling his math teacher. The only reason why anything stopped was because the student council, with their devil durability and enhanced strength, managed to beat everyone down and wipe their memories. Hell, the teachers couldn't even stop them. One football player tried to tackle someone and ended up tackling his math teacher. Issei and Kunou were still hiding behind Issei's invisibility jutsu, just watching the scene unfold. They were laughing to the point where Issei started rolling on the ground. Riaz was just standing there, not because she wanted to, but because she physically couldn't. In her defense, the glue dried really fast. After Sona managed to wash the glue off with magic, she started chewing out Riaz for nearly starting a student civil war. Issei and Kunou eventually pulled themselves together and headed off to class. Issei made a mental note to start being popular and build his fanbase up so that he could mess with Riaz and start a mini-war against Riaz's followers. Unknown to him, however, Kaneko saw all of this and just calmly walked away, not wanting to remember this moment, wishing to forget this. Kunou, however, was happy to be able to spend time with her childhood friend. They were only friends. Not that she would mind if they became more than just friend. Her cheeks flared at the thought of that. As he entered his class, something nobody, not even the reader, saw coming, happened. The teacher announced. Everyone, welcome your new classmate, Yuma Amano. Issei's head whipped his head around so fast that he swore that it hurt his neck crack. As his eyes zoomed in on Yuma, his eyes only got more and more comically wide. He didn't believe this. Did she hit her head or something? Does she need medical attention? She does know that he outclassed her by a lot, right? But the real question came after that. She was stronger. A lot stronger, almost high class now. That was strange. Her aura told him that she was at the same experience. That made no sense unless someone incredibly powerful gifted her power. Shit, this was bad, really bad. To be able to make someone as weak as Rainer to high class would be extremely difficult. Meaning, she had a benefactor who probably not only gave her this power, but also the barrier from yesterday. This made Issei worried, not about himself, but rather for the other devils, and Kunou and Kuo. This person would have to be well beyond them. Rainer's sugar daddy would be pretty damn powerful. Issei knew he had to report them to Rias if he wanted to continue to be on friendly terms with her, to considered an ally, and he wanted to skip class, so that was a win-win for him. He raised his hand and asked the teacher. "Sorry sensei, I forgot I have orc club duties, can I go now?" The teacher hated Issei, since he hated all pretty boys. He was holding a grudge from his high school years when his girlfriend dumped him for a pretty boy. He never got a chance to get back at said pretty boy, so now as a bitter old middle-aged man, he clung on to an irrational hate for pretty boys. But since the school rules said that he had to let students go for club meetings, he stiffly nodded before going teaching his class. Truly, some humans are better left alone. As Issei walked into the orc clubroom, he saw a blonde girl sitting on one of the couches. Issei used his senjutsu to read her emotions and aura. He was very surprised, she seemed to radiate happiness and innocence. That had never happened before, it seemed like that she was the embodiment of purity. That was extremely strange, nobody, not even saints had that much light in them, maybe a seraph, but that wasn't the case, he could sense a sacred gear bound to her soul. After a while, Issei ignored her and walked to Rias and said. Issei knew that she would find out, after all, only a select few in the school could even find access to magical superglue, and he was the only one who could have done it. "Like what happens when you dump super glue and glitter on me?" Rias said in a monotone. Issei winced, mostly because he could tell that this conversation was going nowhere good and he sensed a shitstorm on the horizon. "Look, I'm sorry for that, but the new student is the same fallen angel from before, remember Yuma? But she's back now, but stronger, a lot stronger. So, you got in a fight with a fallen angel and kept it from me? And you're expecting me to just move past the fact you and Kunou pranked me and got me humiliated in front of most of the school? But that's not important, right? Also, I was going to tell you about the entire fight, but the author forgot and wrote it off." Issei decided not to mention that they were just getting started. They would be doing more pranks, just less obvious. Also, the author and the beta were pretty inconsistent with their writing. "Hey, you do know that we can see your words, right? We can do anything we want to you, so stop talking shit about us, we have feeling too, you know." "Yes it is, whatever. Now you're saying there is someone who is boosting people's power." Rias said, not believing what just happened. Actually, she could, but she'd rather just forget about it. "Yes," answered Issei. "Fine, let's just move past that for now. I'll look into this later. But first, let me introduce you to Asia Argento. She is an exiled nun from Vatican City and was tricked by Yuma into coming here. Apparently, Yuma wanted to take her sacred gear. Luckily, Kiba found her and brought her here instead. We won't be creating friction for another great war, considering the fact that Yuma brought her onto my territory without permission." "Oh, so that was why she came back. She wants Asia's sacred gear, huh? I was wondering why she would come back, knowing that I'm still stronger than her. I thought she was just an idiot." Issei thought out loud. After that, Rias told Asia to stay put while Issei brought Rias to see Yuma. As they were walking, Issei explained Yuma's old and current power level while asking Rias about Yuma's background and why was she here. When they got to where Issei's class was though, Yuma was nowhere to be found. Confused, they went back to the orc. That's when Issei realized something. He facepalmed at this, he couldn't believe this. They left Asia by herself, unguarded. Damn it. Issei was slightly worried, he was afraid that something like this would happen, he was wondering what he should do when he turned to Rias, only for her to seem happy. Why would she be happy? Her guest was missing. Heck, by the look on her face, if anything, she was excited. Rias paused. She knew that Issei was probably going to get revenge at the fallen angel for endangering his life, but now, he would have to attack the fallen angels. She could evaluate his strength, and if he does fail, she gets 2 new pieces on her peerage, Issei and Asia. A male kitsune yokai and a sacred gear user. This was a win-win situation for her. There was literally no way that she could lose. However, she knew that this was still a delicate situation. Issei was probably very powerful, and she didn't want to lose a potential ally, she had to seem like that she cared about Asia. Which she did care about her, but if she seemed overly excited, Issei might think that she doesn't care about Asia. There was a simple reason for why she was excited, and that was her status as a devil. Devils were inherently selfish and greedy creatures, they were simply made that way, it was literally in their nature. So they had to learn to control it, since if they seemed like selfish and greedy faction, they would never get allies. Issei seemed to be finished thinking about what to do, turned and told Rias nonchalantly. Screw it, let's rescue her tomorrow, I just want to go home and watch an anime. Saying that Rias was shocked was an understatement. From what Kunou have told her about Issei, he is always extremely protective and was even considered a guardian angel for the innocent. She was nearly certain that he would storm out and rescue Asia, no matter the consequences. Seeing him brush off Asia's disappearance was a bit disconcerting. What happened to him on his training trip? What could have changed him so drastically? As soon as Issei got home, he went straight to his home theater. There he had shelves of anime, such as Strike the Blood, High School of the Dead, Assassination Classroom, along with many others. Don't judge him, he was a weeb. But not justanormalweeb. Get the pun? However, the series he was currently binging was about someone who had special powers and decided to go on a journey to go find something. Notice I'm being vague, you guys guess which anime it is. However, as soon as he played the show on Netflix, the door behind him opened. Issei sighed in annoyance and turned around, only for his expression to soften as he saw that it was Kunou. Kunou had just heard what had happened from Ria's, and if she was being honest with herself, she wasn't surprised in the slightest. She had a sheltered life, yes, due to her being the daughter of Yasaka, but she did experience some hardships, unlike Ria's, with Issei being one of them. Kunou didn't care about any of this. She just wanted to finally spend some time with Issei and get their friendship back on track. After 6 years apart, they might not even be friends anymore. Sure, he was nice to her, but they haven't done anything together. In fact, he've probably talked to Ria's more than her. So she walked in and asked. Issei, why have you been avoiding me lately? I'm not avoiding you, I was just really busy this week. That's not true and you know it, in fact, you didn't even ask me to watch this. Cartoon with you. Issei was pretty calm until now, but he felt a bit insulted that Kunou didn't know what anime was and called it a cartoon. A cartoon, if they weren't childhood friends, he would have asked her to leave by now. He calmly paused the episode and got up and said to Kunou. This is anime and it's basically like another world where. Kunou tried to stop Issei from going on a full-blown rant about anime and how anime was great. He even pulled up some videos and even did a PowerPoint presentation after about 30 minutes of non-stop ranting about anime and how cartoon was inferior. Issei stopped. Kunou now knew all the basics of anime culture and was surprised at how knowledgeable she was about anime. Issei seemed to be a little embarrassed about the long rant he just gave and felt bad for even considering kicking his best, read-only, friend out of his house. He then decided to ask Kunou a simple question. So one watch No Game No Life with me? 6 hours later, damn that's a long time. Why was this show ever cancelled? Kunou was crying at how unfair it was for the show to be cancelled. She loved it. Issei could only sweat drop at how worked up Kunou was getting over the anime. But he really couldn't judge her or blame her, he still felt bad about the mountain. 60 meters gone forever. But when after 20 minutes, Kunou was still storming around lighting stuff on fire. Issei realized the dot. Look Kunou, I know it's horrible, but there are so many more animes out there. Anime itself is a culture, there are more out there. How could there be an anime like that? That was once in a millennia stuff. Kunou said as she burst back into tears, setting more things on fire. Yes, but as anime fans, we must watch as many as humanly possible. Issei responded, trying to calm Kunou down. Like? Kunou suspiciously asked, not believing that there are better animes out there. Mob Psycho 100, Psycho Pass, and more. Issei responded excitingly. I heard Sao was good. Kunou happily responded. God no. Asuna is horrible, Liz is ugly. Nothing against Sao fans, just the characters. But there's a loli with a dragon. A loli with a dragon Kunou said, forgetting that she was also a loli. Fine. Let's just go watch Psycho Pass and then talk about this. Issei gave up on convincing Kunou and decided to go back to watching anime. 9 hours later, holy crap, they've been watching for a long time. After Issei and Kunou finished the anime, trailers, movies, and the No Game No Life movie, Kunou turned around and looked at the clock. Wait a second, doesn't school start 8 AM? What? What the hell is school? Issei said, reaching for his vitamin D supplement bottle. Kunou facepalmed, walked over to Issei and slapped him and the bottle out of his hand. It's 11 o'clock and unlike you, I'm a responsible student, so hurry up. But as it turned out, they needn't have hurried after all. In fact, even if they stayed home and watched anime, no one at school would have noticed. Because Issei and Kunou arrived at school to find two things. 1, a half-destroyed Kuo Academy and the entire student and teacher population asleep. High above the school, Issei spotted the Grimoire peerage fighting against what seems like to be a group of fallen angels. Issei was slowly beepizing the situation, while Kunou was just staring at the scene with a mix of wonder and a growing sense of terror. Issei decided that the best thing he could do currently was to both stall for time and siphon information, which would mean acting dumb. Great. He hated acting dumb. Stepping 4. So, you fallen angels are starting phase 1 of your plan. Well, at least school is cancelled. While Rainer and her cronies stared at him, Riaz did too, but noticed that the way he phrased it made it sound like a joke, but it was quite obviously a poke for information. Rainer wasn't nearly as smart as Riaz and was kinda retarded. I mean, she forgot who Issei was, Issei, the person she asked out on a day, only a couple days ago. In this self-induced state, she started babbling. Oh hey, look like someone let in a monkey. You seem to be aware of the supernatural, right? I'll share my plan with you. I'm going to steal this girl's sacred gear. Issei decided that this fallen angel was not going to become a threat. Sure, she had a lot of power at her disposal now, but she lacked the brains that should have came with the brawn. But he still had to deal with her, as it would look bad if he just ignored a major incident on devil territory. So he decided to release 25% of his power, seeing as he would have done that anyways if he wanted to be involved with the supernatural. Rainer almost had a heart attack when she felt his power go from high human levels to that of a low ultimate class devil. Issei jumped in the air and lunged at Rainer. One of Rainer's subordinates didn't have the ability to sense the power tiers of others, stood between him and Rainer. He formed a light spear and just swiped at Issei. Issei punched the spear, which shattered it. He then hit the fallen angel in the neck, which caused him to drop to the ground like a stone in water. This repeated for the other 2 fallen angels, leaving one very scared Rainer still flying. However, as Issei charged her, a barrier sprung up between them. Issei was surprised, and by the looks of it, so was Rainer. Not to be detoured, Issei just flew around it, but a second barrier popped up. So Issei decided to just smash through these barriers, as they weren't really that tough. As he slowly gained ground, Rainer got more and more nervous. She knew that the person who gave her newfound power also probably put this auto barrier mechanism in place, but she had no way of stopping this madman coming at her. How did he get so strong so fast, anyways? Riaz and her peerage were on the ground now and were staring at Issei. Issei had finally broken through the barriers and now Rainer was getting desperate. She pulled out the last thing she was given, pointed it at Issei, and threw it at him. Issei, being much more competent than Rainer, could tell that what she threw was basically a supernatural grenade. Well, it wouldn't kill him per se, it would definitely hurt. Oh, and those devils and Kunou down there too, but that's not important. Issei created a small rift that would send the grenade into space and just adjust the position so the grenade fell right in. While he was concentrated on that though, Rainer decided to take the opportunity and fly back to the Grigori. At least there, she would have some support rather than try and reason with this monster. Issei saw her, but he didn't really mind, seeing as he just wanted to go back to watching an anime. 2 days later. Issei, I have to leave. Wait, what? Why? Kunou looked absolutely heartbroken as she told Issei the new. The Kyoto faction had learned about the incident and found Kunou as well. I have to go back to Kyoto, but I promise you that when I come back, I won't be the same spoiled princess. Kunou, no matter what you do, you will always be that same little princess to me. Kunou blushed, and with that, she walked. Moments later, someone else came through a second magic circle, directly behind Issei. Hello, Naya. Hey. Issei greeted the Nekashu and just walked away. Aren't you going to ask about why I'm here? Nope, since we both know that you are probably here for some dumbest reason for the Cows Brigade. Is that how you treat a lover you haven't seen in 2 years? No, seeing as you are not my lover. We had sex once, but that was when I was drunk and you literally tricked me into it. 2, you chose to go to the Cows Brigade, which is the reason why I haven't seen you in the first place. Can I at least stay at your place? Only if you stop trying to make your mate. Oh, I knew you love me. The next day. The school day started off pretty well since Kuroka enrolled in the 3rd year's class and Kaneko was out sick. Other than the fact every boy in Issei's class bought a ton of flour, get well cards, and expensive chocolate for Kaneko, everything was normal. Issei threw away the flowers and cards just to save Kaneko the trouble. He also ate some chocolates, but that's not important. Another thing was that the school's second loli, now nicknamed Little Vixen, Kunou took a break from school. Sure, some people believed it was just because she was homesick, but others made a theory that Issei had gotten her pregnant and she was taking a break to raise the kid. This was both absurd and untrue, but there technically wasn't any evidence against it, so the rumor was engraved into every pervert in the school. On second thought, the day wasn't going too great. But the real trouble started at lunch. Issei was sitting under a tree eating a bento, like always, when Kuroka sat next to him and started picking off some of his lunch. Like you would expect of a high school, everyone was watching the new hot transfer student and when she sat down next to Issei, it was basically a psychological disaster for half the school. Surprisingly, that half wasn't just boys. Sure, it was mostly boys since they were the ones watching Kuroka, but also some girls. The reasons were different, though surprisingly similar. The boy's reason. The new student who arrived less than a year ago had already bagged the school's little vixen, Kunou, but as soon as she left, the guy picked up another smoking hot girl. The girl's far more reasonable concerns. The new transfer student was apparently a playboy and, if the rumor is correct, cheating on a pregnant 15-year-old. However, some people who were envious of Issei now thought he must be a god in human form. Which normal person can make friends with the orc in 8 months while having being a friend one of the cutest girl in the school and then befriend the new transfer student who is obviously into him? If things went on like this, there could be some riots in the near future since the teachers at this school seem to all be dumbasses. Kuo Academy staff probably regret turning this school into a co-ed school. After that incident at school, Issei was heading home when Issei remembered that he still had to turn in his monthly orc club member report to Rias. Even though the entire club was a cover for their devil activities, they still had to keep up appearances. So Issei told. When Issei walked into the room, he saw a maid with long golden hair standing by Rias, talking to her. Rias seemed to be a bad mood, but Issei could tell this new woman was a devil, and a strong one at that. With no desire to intervene in their affairs, Issei just walked up to Rias and handed the form to her. Just as he handed the form to Rias, a giant orange magic circle popped up behind Issei. Issei looked over and placed a restricting seal on the circle. The man inside, who was obviously trying to make a flash appearance with flames and a cool glow, was forced to more or less crawl out. "Hello Rias. Have you made a decision on whether or not to marry Razor yet?" Even though Issei was trying not to get involved, his self-restraint was not one of his strong points. "Dude, you're crawling in here and then you ask Rias to marry you? Also, what kind of douchebag refers to themselves in third person? Shut up. Razor has no time for Yaokai half-bloods. Take your affairs out of here." "Alright, fine you piece of half-assed fried chicken. What did you just call me, you low-life?" Razor summoned a fireball the size of a basketball and as hot as napalm. This was impressive, but below average for a matured member of the Phoenix family. It was quite clear to Issei that Razor has gotten through life purely off of talent and his family's enormous wealth. As Issei was about to some elemental senjutsu to knock that fireball out of his hand, the maid besides Rias called out. "Razor. Stop this foolishness at once. Mayu Serziches had ordered me here to keep peace during this meeting, and if that means stopping you by force, I shall not hesitate." "Will you? Damn, this lady was serious and quite powerful, if her aura was any indication." Issei concluded that this was probably Serzich's wife, Grafia. Issei decided to also sit down to preserve his relationships with the devils as Razor started to talk to Rias. If Issei had to use one word to describe devil's politics, he would use complex. Of course, he had no such restrictions, so it was more along the lines of unnecessarily complex, boring, retarded, and disgusting. Unfortunately, with Grafia here, a person who even Issei respected, he had to hold off on stating his opinion. But after a while of watching Razor, who was being the textbook definition of an asshole, and him flaunting around his high-class Phoenix status, Issei began to really question how badly he wanted an alliance with the devils if he could take Grafia one-on-one. Then Razor attempts to make some advances on Rias, which Issei would not really mind if he wasn't so damn bad at it. He would put his hand on Rias' thigh and subtly moved his hand up. Issei could honestly not see how he thought this would be any way effective on proving that he was fiancé material and not an absolute douchebag. It felt like Razor was trying to see how he could make Rias more repulsed by him. Actually, that does sound pretty fun. Issei made a mental note to write that down later. But for now, he continued observing. Obviously Razor's harem skills, slut-gathering skills, were not prepared for rejection, as when Rias continued to bat his hand away and yell at him, his 20 brain cells couldn't comprehend what was happening. Eventually, Razor decided to just talk about their engagement. They go through the classic arguing phase until Razor loses his absurdly short temper and threatens Ria's entire peerage. Grafia threatens Razor and says Serziches has sent me here to keep peace and I shall do that at all costs, even if it means I have to incapacitate you. Razor wasn't dumb enough to pick a fight and responded accordingly with yes, of course. If the strongest queen says so, who am I to refuse? Issei, not really caring for Rias, was barely even paying attention until Razor's threat. Mostly because of the fact that Kuroka begged him to protect Kaneko in her absence. Honestly, Issei didn't see how devils got anything done. Everything was just really bad negotiating and compromising until one side threatened the other side, which leads to more aggression and just generally leaves everyone in a bad mood. However, then Grafia mentioned an unofficial rating game between Rias and Razor. Now, Issei didn't really give a damn about Ria's sheltered uprising and how she couldn't accept she didn't get to choose literally everything, and he gave even less of a damn for Razor's absurd superiority complex or his blatant disregard for anything past a woman's looks and sexual appeal. One that he did care about though, was finally getting things going by building up some popularity. He knew that even if it was unofficial, there would be a lot of important people watching. All he had to do was just act like he was saving Ria's, show off and boom. If he could just become a high-class devil, he would finally be able to accomplish the goal he had been waiting for the past 4 years. So for once, he actually cared about Ria's decision. Fine, Razor, I accept. And Issei's plan was set in motion. Issei watched Ria's peerage begin their training, and since Kuroka asked him to monitor Kaneko's training and try and nudge her towards ninjutsu, he accepted Ria's invitation to come along. Only to witness them do a resistance training by lugging giant backpacks full of logs and stones up a mountain. Issei could honestly see Ria's trainer skills showing. By taking these up the mountain, they aren't training their entire body, like what resistance training is supposed to do, but rather put a lot of pressure on their hips and thighs, along with causing nothing but pain from their lower back. But it was training, and Ria's was inexperienced, so Issei decided not to comment. His kindness didn't extend to mentioning he had yokai weight seals, which were much more effective. A few hours later though, watching Asia, she got recruited, receive magical training and Kaneko do strength training, Issei was bored enough to step in. He decided that Asia's magic training could wait, seeing as she still refused to hurt anyone, and Kaneko had a much better way to train than practicing punching and kicking. Hey Kunou, I can take over their training from her. You go focus on yourself for a bit, alright? Sure Issei. Just don't get too much alone time. Issei was quite sure that last part was a jab at him, but he ignored and called Kaneko and Asia over. Asia. You are mainly going to be a healer, so don't focus too much on learning elemental magic. We need to build up your magical reserves, as you really can't learn enough elemental magic in 10 days to be actually useful. Kaneko, this is where you come in. Just put as much stress as you can on your body and build up muscle. When your muscles tear, which should be quite frequent, have Asia heal you. This should both improve strength and help Asia's training. Hi. Later that night, Issei was going to go for a hike when he saw Ria sitting alone outside. Issei immediately thought this was too similar to an anime's romance development and decided to just go around her. Unfortunately, the world seemed to insist on something happening tonight because before he even made it off the estate, he saw Kaneko sitting in a tree with her nekashu features out. With a reluctant sigh, Issei called out to Kaneko. Hey. Kaneko. Why are you doing up there? Kaneko immediately fearfully retracted her tail and ears, then whispered out. Who's there? While she looked relieved when she saw Issei, she still didn't let her guard down. Jill. Look, I know about your nekashu heritage already. I was just going to tell you to embrace your heritage. Don't hide from it anymore. Shut up. Do you know how it feels to be hunted down, to be imprisoned for what you never did? What it feels like to have something that you couldn't possibly control ruin your life? To have your loved ones turn on you? Figure it out for yourself, I guess. But I will say one thing, Kuroka really isn't nearly as bad as you think. I'm guessing by now you know that she enrolled at the school. There's a reason why Sirzich's let her join in the first place. And on that cheery note, Issei decided to finally start his hike. But boy will he be in for a surprise. And so how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.